Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya addressed this nation, this country, for well over 30 minutes in my estimation.
Specifically 42 minutes.
42 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that correction.
It is wastage to buy a CJ a Mercedes 500, but it is not a wastage to buy the two speakers of the National Assembly Mercedes 500. Some CSS and the PSS are bragging that the CJ will or should be removed before the end of this year. Really? Kumbe hii nchi kuna wenyewe.
Every army is supposed to know how to deal with issues. We can't be as parliament merely because there's been a circular become crybabies, because we can't go crying to the public. You represent the same public, so you can't cry to them. You must look for ways of dealing with the issues that affect you.
Mr. Speaker, I kindly urge you, two wrongs don't make a right. Maybe the Honorable CJ was not right in addressing matters of budget and legislation together with protocol in the way he did. But frustration, Mr. Speaker, can make you lose your mind.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program tonight. And the best place to begin this discussion is by reading the body language of the Chief Justice. And I begin with Joy. Is the Chief Justice frustrated, in your opinion? And what is the extent of that frustration, even before we get to the nitty-gritties of what's frustrating him?
Thank you so much, Ken, for having me tonight. I had the privilege of serving with Judge Maraga in Mombasa. He was the judge and I was a magistrate under him. And I knew him to be a man of a measured emotion and a man who pursues peace generally. He was somebody who was very diplomatic, very tactical, who would dialogue rather than be confrontational. He is not somebody who's bound to have outbursts of emotion or just reactions willy-nilly. So what I saw yesterday was a man who felt he's been backed against the wall.
Okay.
Felt he had nothing left to lose. He had lost, all channels had been exhausted, and he had gotten to a place where, you know what, let me just do this, let the chips fall where they may. Okay. And I agree with what Mheshimiwa Olago said at the end. Sometimes you can be so frustrated until you lose your usual demeanor and your usual decorum. Even when you've seen the Chief Justice before, he has been a man who, with a big smile, despite whatever comes his way, he just seems to sort of take it in the chin. But yesterday we saw somebody who was visibly upset, and he had an uncharacteristic abandon about him.
So he's been pushed to the wall, and he's likely coming out on the other side of that wall.
He's decided, you know what, let's just do this, let the chips fall where they may.
Okay. My interaction with the Chief Justice a while ago, there's a time we were reporting at the Supreme Court building, and then we reported something that we had not been told because they were at a meeting. So when he came, the Chief Justice told me, you people, really? We didn't talk about that? That was, so I understand his demeanor. But let me speak to Kanjama. You look at the Chief Justice and what he said, because I'll go to the specifics. How frustrated do you think the Chief Justice is tonight or yesterday?
I think he's quite frustrated. And to be honest, so all the other people in the legal profession, we lawyers are extremely frustrated.
Yeah.
The moment the budget cuts were announced in that circular from Treasury, without even any supplementary appropriations bill having been published and affecting all ministries, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary looked at the coffers of the Judiciary and they were suddenly empty. And so she sent an emergency circular to all judicial officers and staff, telling them certain things cannot take place anymore. And before we knew it, courts had stopped sitting. Maybe the executive imagines that recurrent expenditure in judiciary is used in the same way is used in the executive. Per diems for trips to foreign countries, to attend seminars and so on. They don't realize that it is part of the ordinary pattern of administering justice. The judicial officers travel from one place to another. You have numerous tribunals which are staffed by part-time lawyers, run their own law firms, and 1 week a month, for example, they sit in those tribunals to hear cases. And they survive based on sitting allowance. They don't get a salary. So the moment they cut off all that, it was chopping off the legs from under the feet of the judiciary. And I must say, about a week and a half before the Chief Justice gave his statement, I led a delegation of branch chairs of LSK to meet the Chief Justice. We are going there to discuss practice issues affecting lawyers in their different branches. And we are trying to put the Chief Justice to task and tell him why are all the tribunals not sitting. And when he explained to us what has really happened, we were really taken aback. We were in shock.
Before it was announced that there's going to be budget cuts?
No, it was just a week and a half ago.
Okay.
It had been announced before. So we're trying to understand how is it impacting the judiciary. We're really shocked. So, for example, the digitization program that we have been pushing for in the judiciary, the entire ICT budget was wiped clean.
Yes.
So we're really appalled, and we said that members of the public need judicial services. And we know, because we have engaged with these matters for some time, that the budget of the judiciary has been going down from 1%
Yes.
of government budget until now it is around 0.5 or 0, approaching 0.6.
The last one, 6.9, yes.
Yeah, so it's really sad. While the rest of government is growing, the judiciary is shrinking, and yet the cases are growing. The number of judicial officers are being recruited more and more. So we wonder, how does Treasury do the math?
Okay, I'll come to that. Let me speak to you. And do you find a justification to the Chief Justice addressing a press conference on this? I mean, a simple letter to Parliament would have sufficed, in my opinion.
No, I think it was very important for the CJ to speak out, because you understand that this is a matter that is affecting the public, and we as lawyers are part of the public. And if you look at those instances that Charles has talked about, that the courts are grinding to a halt, services cannot be offered by the courts, the CJ must speak out, because as it is currently, even as we speak, LSK has gone to court over that same issue. You know, we have filed a petition, but if you look at it realistically, that petition will be decided by the same judiciary that is affected. Now, it doesn't help that the services are actually coming to a halt. So it is important for him to actually speak out and speak his truth, because like Joyce said earlier, he's frustrated, and members of the public are frustrated. He even said that the judiciary, he gave numbers that the judiciary deals with 400,000 cases a year, and they're only able to dispense with 300,000 because of lack of manpower. Now, if you look at the snowball effect, it might not look like much now, but this is something that is going to affect service delivery in the very important arm of the state.
Okay, and my question is, how come you're so realistic to know that it's going to affect service delivery, and the people who are doing the budget cuts are not?
Well, it's obvious that it's going to affect service delivery.
But how comes they don't see that?
Well, I think it's just impunity, if you ask me.
It's impunity?
Yes.
Okay. Prof, some question. And do you find a justification to the CJ addressing the media on this? Because there could be several other ways of addressing this.
It was interesting to watch the whole thing.
Interesting is one way.
Very, very interesting. Yes, the CJ had some grievances, but he's not the only one who has grievances. I think the whole country has a problem. You know, and the reduction in terms of budgeting is across the board. We have ministries that are not functional. We have offices, so the uneven parliament has been affected a little bit. Yeah?
With budget cuts?
Yes. So it is across the board.
Yes.
So we start by that. It's across the board. Now, did the CJ have a right to complain?
To the public, not just to complain, to the public.
To the public. I think he's a Kenyan. He's entitled to some views on what may be affecting the judiciary. The judiciary itself has its own structural problem, internal structural problems, and some of them need to come out so that if you're going to deal with this thing, deal with some of those things,
okay.
the internal things. What was interesting about the performance is not he's complaining that there is a shortage of money. That he came alone. That's what I noticed.
He came to speak alone.
Alone.
Yes.
I mean, this is an institutional matter, not a personal issue.
But even when he's accompanied, Professor, he's usually the only one speaking.
Well, but you know, there is something good in having
People
support battalion. Eh?
Yes. It's political.
The JS, the Judicial Service Commission.
Yes.
This is their job as the employers of these people. So the Judicial Service Commission should be, I think, should have been the one raising.
What does that tell you, that he came alone?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we are trying to understand. Eh?
Yes.
Then he made a mistake. Let's admit he made a mistake. Not in coming out to talk, but when he personalized the thing, then you know, you start raising what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah? Because the expectations that at certain level there are things you don't engage in.
You concerned with personal things that concern the office of the Chief Justice, or as Maraga?
You know, like some 10 years ago almost, Raila Odinga went complaining about a carpet.
In Mombasa. Oh, that's your concern,
Yeah,
the
but I mean,
personal things about the motor vehicle.
The office itself
yes.
is above that. The office is above that.
But Prof, how would you want him to address these challenges? For example, he doesn't have a motor vehicle. The lounge is not open to him, right? He cannot see the president. The CSs and the PSs are cleared first. How would you want him to address it?
That is a judgment call as a person to him. I don't think that every person who becomes Chief Justice will behave that way. So there are different ways of looking at it. Yes, he has grievances.
Okay.
And yes, maybe there are some people doing strange things. And if it's true there are CSs who have been telling him awkward things, maybe we need to know who these are. Because they should not be doing that. And but the whole thing, I think he would have been, he would have done very well if he just said, we have these problems, we cannot run the court because of the following.
Okay.
And stop there.
Last
when
year,
it gets personal,
yes.
Then it
last
diminishes.
year, ladies and gentlemen, you remember when the judiciary was allocated 50 million shillings for development. The same thing happened. Remember, he even granted an interview to the nation, and we did an interview on the same.
Yes.
So he's usually pushed by the interest of the judiciary. But when you look at the sentiments that now surround his statement, do you really think that's the interest that is driving the Chief Justice?
Allow me to say that hindsight is, they say, 20/20 vision. And none of us, if we were in the shoes of the Chief Justice, would act in exactly the same way. So you bring in your personality and your style and your temperament in addressing issues. I think he went out first with a written speech, which contained the core of his message. I'm sure also in determining whether to go out alone or accompanied by other people, there is this question of what is the role of the judiciary, what is the role of JSC. That is an issue that has been dealt with even by the Supreme Court. Okay. It is true that the judiciary has its own committee called the Judiciary Leaders Committee. I think it's called JLAC or something like that. And it is also possible it could have gone out with the senior judiciary leaders, the President of the High Court, the Court of Appeal, the Chief Registrar, but there is already a case in the judiciary on the same issue. So maybe he considered all those factors and chose to go out alone so that he can at least safeguard the integrity of the judiciary that is currently dealing with a matter on that issue. Definitely, each of us can look at the speech of the Chief Justice and say, maybe he should not have said this, maybe he should have focused more on this or the other thing. I think the key thing why we are here is to look at the substance or the essence. Is it right for Treasury, when they are deciding on removing money from ministries that have been allocated too much and suddenly the country is broke, to treat the judiciary like another government ministry? And yet the judiciary is meant to maintain certain independence. And should they make that decision without consulting Parliament like they would do for their own arm? Because you see, for the judiciary, you have to go through Parliament. You have to get Parliament to agree. That's why we have checks and balances between the three arms of government. So I think the concern that he was raising was a very valid concern. Okay. It's very easy for Treasury to treat the judiciary as a soft target. not even out of malice, just because this is another, it's like a stepchild. So you do it just casually. You may not even be doing it maliciously. And that's why you have this architecture of ensuring that Treasury does not directly impinge on the finances of judiciary without getting the approval of the third arm of government.
Okay.
No, but the thing that came across for me as well, when he went on his tangent, inappropriate as it was, one thing that I felt he was trying to communicate is that the erosion of the independence of the judiciary is not just in terms of the allocation of funds, but in the stature and the respect that is given to the judiciary as an institution and as the third arm of government. If today, God forbid, the president, the deputy president, and the speaker of the National Assembly were taken out of this world in one sweep, the Chief Justice would be the one standing in as president in the interim period before we organize for another election. He is fourth in the pecking order. He's not short staff, for lack of a better word. So when you are replacing, for example, motor vehicles, you know he's had an accident. That's why he was saying, if the others get a new Mercedes, you know mine is damaged, and suddenly when it comes to mine, it's waste. That's ridiculousness. And I felt he was trying to show that this disrespect is systemic, is not an accidental thing. And that's why the allusion of maybe this is an orchestration, maybe this is a scheme. And it would be somebody who's very foolhardy, who'd dismiss everything offhand. If I was like what Parliament was doing today, and if I was the executive, I would call my troops and say, you know what, is there truth in what is going on here? That's
if you're the executive and you're not behind it.
Because this is the third arm of government. It is not a department of the executive.
Okay.
Yeah.
But actually, even, okay.
Yeah, actually, Ken, you know, there's the saying that you're only as strong as your weakest link.
True.
Now, this systemic assault on the judiciary, it didn't start yesterday. It didn't start with the budget cuts. It's something that has happened over time, and you've alluded to it earlier. So that if you find yourself as an important arm of the state, actually, in Article 3 of the Constitution, Article 1, where it talks about sovereign power, how it's devolved to the state organs, so that judiciary is a state organ. It is not just a mere, you know how people, perception, even how people say arm of government. We're talking about an arm of the state, so that it's an independent, important, crucial arm of the state that is being weakened over and over and with time. What does that tell you? That the executive is strong, the parliament is strong, but this judiciary is weak.
When you say it's being weakened, by who?
I mean, look at the latest. The latest being that now you have budget cut that has been effected by Treasury.
Across the board, don't forget that.
Yes, but affecting an arm of the state. What would usually happen, ideally, in an ideal world, would be consult. Because you don't wake up one morning and say, I'm cutting your funding. Because you're the same person, remember, you, Treasury, who went to Parliament with estimates of your budget and presented, which included the estimates that came from the judiciary. And judiciary went through a process of budget making, a budget process where their allocation was actually reduced, and then it went to a charge to the consolidated fund. Now, Treasury has no right whatsoever to touch that money once it's been charged to the consolidated fund. So that aggression in itself is obvious weakening. When you look at the failure to swear in judges, that is pushback. And that is the perception you get. As a member of the public, when you're watching, you'll be wondering, Nai judiciary, how do we relate with it?
Regardless of the reasons given for not doing it.
Exactly, so that even when you appear before a judge or before a court and you're expecting justice, are you going to walk out of there with that confidence that you've actually received the justice that you want?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the budget from each organ, ministries, that was approved by Parliament, that one is supposed to be there. And I understand that the courts are operating, some are having problems, but generally judges are sitting, magistrates are sitting.
Yes.
The routine of the judiciary is taking place. What may be having some problems are the innovations and things that maybe are desired to be done But the routine, I understand, is taking place. Next, the Treasury has no power to cut a budget that has already been passed.
Appropriated, yes.
Okay? So whatever the Judiciary got, that one in theory is still there. My understanding of what the Minister for Finance did, and I think he was very bold, give him credit. He essentially told us that the country is broke.
True.
Huh? There is no money. And the circular he sent, my understanding, was just a cautionary. Every institution, look at yourself again, because the country has no money. I do not think he was saying I'm targeting the judiciary on this thing. I don't think he was saying now you, that department, only you cut and the rest don't count. The very fact that he admitted that the country is broke is something that we should be considering. And all he did is to send out a circular. We have a problem.